crude oil prices soared to about 14-year high of $140 a barrel on Monday, with the Ukraine-Russian conflict showing no signs of abating, causing the crude oil price to surpass its record high of $147.50 a barrel. The surge in oil prices comes with serious implications for both oil-producing and non-producing countries, unlike as the United States and its European allies considered banning the importation of Russian oil in protest against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The expectation is that oil exporting countries will rake in revenues and grow their foreign reserves, while the cost of goods will rise globally. But for a country like Nigeria, which sells crude and buys refined fuel, the effects will not be as straightforward. Well, let's understand this. I have somebody. He's an author, he's an energy lawyer, he's an analyst. Dr. Ayodele Oni, it's good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming in today and making us understand many of this. First, that ban, because outrightly President Biden was out yesterday and he says we are going to stop imports from Russia. What does that mean for the whole world?
It means that 10-11 million barrels of crude per day will disappear.
Straight up.
And you know, apart from the physical absence, there's a risk premium to pricing crude. So once there are rumors, uncertainty, it affects crude oil prices. So then imagine that there is then an actual ban. You know, that's a challenge, and it definitely will apprise. You know, it's market forces of demand and supply, one, and also the market does look at a lot of risks, rumors, all of that.
React to all of these things.
That's true. Pricing, yes,
that's true.
Pricing.
Even Shell is saying they'll stop buying Russian crude. You see, even companies are coming out directly to say all of this. But do you think that many say it might be easier for the United States, but might not be easier for other European countries? What do you think? Okay,
yes, it's the case because the US too does have substantial oil reserves.
Not shale oil.
Yeah. Well, so the challenge usually is that once oil prices reach a particular price,
yes,
even unconventional crude is also then usable and useful, considering current technology. So it may not necessarily be as much conventional oil as it is unconventional, but that also does become useful. But it definitely will affect everyone. It will affect the world. It will affect those who need it already. And there's some statistics. About 12% of the crude made available in the market every day is from Russia. So there's the second largest exporter. Number 3 in terms of production, number 2 in terms of exporter. You know what that means? That's substantial. Imagine 12% just going off or having challenges around getting that percentage. So yes, it will affect everyone.
So coming down to layman so that we understand this, there are even projections that oil price might hit as much as $300 if we continue at this pace. That was said yesterday by one of the ministers. But what do you think? And the continuous increase in the price of crude is not a good story for Nigeria.
Well, I'd say it's good and bad. So good in the sense that we should have more revenues, particularly if we can ramp up production. I think the last statistics I saw from OPEC, we're doing 1.38 million barrels per day.
And we're supposed to do 1.7.
Yeah, we have the capacity to do much more, and we aren't. So if we can ramp up, but there are those issues, focados, all of that. You've got those issues anyway. We won't go into those. So the advantage is in it exceeds what we've benchmarked in the budget. I know at some point there was some modification and it's around $62. It was 53 or so. Yes. So that should suggest that we should have more income. However, it looks like we get income and then we lose it because of the same reason that we need to then import.
We get it with products, the right, and it goes with the left.
Exactly. Like AGO diesel is about 625. 25 is 625 per liter. And now that is a problem because most manufacturers, most factories rely on diesel to produce and to manufacture. We do not, the power sector isn't where it should be. A lot of guys complain that they do not have electricity. A lot of manufacturers who do not self-generate. And self-generation is definitely more expensive than grid power.
Yes,
so once you self-generate, especially if you use LPF or use diesel, all of those, then as they usually are passed through. So as their prices increase, the tariffs increase, your cost of production increases, and ultimately the prices of goods and services will also be affected, and it could lead to even hyperinflation if we're not careful, unless government begins to take certain steps, whether it's additional subsidies, which can be a problem in itself, and whether we can afford that. Those are issues. You know, it's simple. If you need to use your vehicle, if you need to use fuel every day, the price keeps going up, and you need to recover that cost, and then it means you increase the cost of your own services or final output prices for you to be able to cover your cost of getting the finished products. So that's what it is, unfortunately.
Great stuff. We're talking about 10 million, almost 10 million barrels here.
Yes, it is.
Can the world bridge this gap? Can we bridge this gap from somewhere else? Is it possible?
Interestingly, the problem, you know, OPEC is a cartel. Output price. If OPEC then agrees, particularly, and this is, you're talking about Saudi Arabia largely, and maybe the UAE to an extent. If you have OPEC say increase production quotas, then that will help that price stabilize and not go up further. It could maybe come down a bit, but as long as OPEC believes it's a profit-making opportunity or whatever else it might be, then, and quotas don't increase, then we will still have this, and prices may continue to go up, and it will affect us.
It's complicated here.
Yes,
aviation fuel is affected here.
Yes.
Cost of transportation will be affected here. You've talked about hyperinflation, which is something that we might also see. Poverty level will continue to remain on the high side if this continues. Now, so what's any quick wins, or is it just a resolution to all of this?
Okay, so it's international politics and diplomacy. So if parties can reach some form of truce, and OPEC can take some steps, then we can begin to see stability. We can begin to see prices go down. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. That's what I see. If all of those don't come to the fore, we produce the base resource, but we usually then need to import the finished products. And you know, it would even be more advantageous for us, for example, if we had completed the Trans-Saharan pipeline from somewhere in the Niger Delta around Warri all the way to Niger and Algeria, because that would, for example, be additional source of income, you know, so that
you're talking about gas now.
Yeah, gas. Because both, you know the funny thing, it's not just crude. Russia does produce substantial
gas.
Natural gas. 35% of what they use
and we have gas in abundance. So please, you're the professional here. How can we take advantage of the situation?
So what you have is methane. What you have is gas in its base form, and more often than not, you need to process, you need to refine that gas. That's why when gas prices went up 2, 3, 4 months ago, cooking gas prices went up because we weren't producing sufficient quantities. NLNG does produce a percentage, but remember that NLNG does have long-term contracts with respect to its gas that's liquefied and all of that. So we weren't producing enough. So as international oil prices went up, when we got refined products, they were more expensive, landing cost and all of that. So you and I had to buy gas for double the price. So it's international vagaries affect us because we rely a lot on finished products, not adding value to our product. I mean, the NNPC has done quite a bit around the swap arrangement and all of that with respect to crude, but those are never perfect situations, and everyone wants to do business to make profit. So if the base resource increases internationally, you have about 7 additional costs to import crude. You know, you've got insurance, you've got your freight, you've got all sorts. Yeah, so those just make nonsense of whatever income you make when you do need to then expend much. Imagine making $1 billion from exporting and having to buy finished products for $1.2 billion. That means you're losing $200 million. It's that simple.
The subsidy aspect now comes to me again because already we were looking for about 3 trillion naira. I guess that was what NNPC said, and there was a supplementary budget of 2.6 trillion and all of that. Now, where do we stand in regards to subsidy? This question is going to be 2 in 1. I've asked experts like you this question, and I'm going to ask you too. Diesel is deregulated. Kerosene, deregulated. And we want PMS. Or the argument is that PMS should also be deregulated. Are you sure we won't go through the same kind of problem? Maybe that is why Labour is saying, we are not going to let you deregulate PMS.
Okay. Well, two in one. First bit, and I'll answer it some way. We will go through the same problems where these issues happen internationally, as long as we do not refine sufficient quantities. Now, the reason why we can sit pretty with respect to PMS when it is available is because there's subsidy. Imagine there was no subsidy on PMS, you probably be speaking to around 600, 500 per liter, and that's going to be crazy. There's going to be chaos. Because you and I'm sure you've probably run, except if you live in a serviced estate, you probably have run your generator in the last 24 hours. Yes. So I'll give you a simple scenario. In the last few days, it's cost me about 15,000 naira per day to self-generate, to run my generator at home. 15,000 naira a day. Do the maths. So it's going to be chaos. It's going to be chaotic. Inflation, all of that is going to be chaotic. Because you want to go to the barber shop who needs to use generator. It's going to factor that cost.
Of course. So like double of everything.
And then we speak about the quantum of unemployment. More people are going to become more desperate. Armed robbery, vices and sorts will also increase. So these issues are hydra-headed. If you don't solve the power problem, difficult to stop subsidy. If you don't refine, difficult to stop subsidy. Because those are the things that will ameliorate the challenges with that. Because then you take away 5-6 additional costs, which drive up the price if you can refine locally.
Before I go, I want to stay a little bit on refining, but I'm also saying that I think the EU is more exposed to Russia than even the United States, right?
Yes.
So gas, right?
Yes.
So that's a little bit
and it's
dicey.
Winter. And it's winter. Gas. See, Russia supplies 35% or thereabout of the gas used in Europe, and when it is cold, it is actually very cold. When you go to countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, it's cold. So and whether it's eating, HEATING, whether it's to eat, it is gas. And if someone supplies 35, yes, 35% of your gas needs. It's big. It's big. It's really and you need to be very careful. And you don't. Gas is not like crude, which is readily a commodity, so to speak. Gas is less of that sort of commodity where you can easily do spot arrangements. So it's dicey for the world. That's why everyone is trying to also tread carefully.
Caution here.
Yes.
Well, let's come back home. Refining. Dr. Oni, we've talked very much about the 4 refineries and government saying, yes, we would revamp. No, it's rehabilitate. Yes. That's the word now. So that I get it right. The Port Harcourt refinery, and it's about $1.5 billion. That's what we expect to expend on that project. We also have this other refinery, the privately owned one here in Lagos, where we are. With all of these moves, do you think we could just address one of these challenges one way or the other with these moves?
Yes, I mean, if all these are seen true, that's the problem with this part of the world. True. It's not, we say a lot and do very little. If we have some of the best policies in the world, you'll be surprised. We have some of the best pieces of legislation in the world, but its implementation is seeing these things through. I know the NNPC is quite serious around the refineries, even beyond the Port Harcourt refinery. There's the Kaduna, there's Warri, a lot. Government intends to do a lot, but it then goes to issues around net zero, decarbonization. It's more difficult getting financing for oil and gas projects. Maybe the world will begin to rethink it with Elon Musk saying that more oil and gas should be pumped. The world will begin to see that you cannot immediately substitute, because that's where the world seems to be rushing to. You cannot immediately substitute renewables for hydrocarbons. Yes, they still have a major, particularly in this part of the world, in sub-Saharan Africa, even in Europe, gas. So I think we need to have a rethink, because it was almost drying up, getting funding for hydrocarbon projects. Almost drying up.
Wow, everyone is shifting already.
But maybe there'll be a rethink.
Transition period for
this. Well, that's why you hear people, that's why there was a COP26. You hear Nigeria is looking at 2060, rest of the world, some of the world is looking at 2050. And even amongst the world, like Australia, there have been debates.
Can we get out all of this oil and sell what we can sell before that time?
Well, it's about energy security. My view, energy security is two ways. There's security of energy supply and the security of energy demand. Now, question for us is if we decide we want to continue to use crude oil for the foreseeable future, can we finance, produce, refine locally? If we can, we're in good stead. The problem then is security of energy demand, whether people will demand for our energy. But if we're self-sufficient from an energy perspective, then it reduces the risk to us.
At that. Now all of this, I'm not looking at the entire oil market. You know, it's not just the oil market, even the economy. There have been projections, there have been reprojections with what we have on ground. And I'm sure a lot of consulting and all of that, what you do and all of this, advising your partners. And what is your projection for the sector? What are you thinking? Will all of this reshape some of these earlier projections that we've had?
Oh, yes. Every now and then you see statistics from the EIA, you see statistics from OPEC. At some point, the debate was that very soon oil, gas would be completely irrelevant. But it appears that that's not the case. Statistics, the numbers, some of those are changing. So I think that we are beginning to realize that oil and gas, particularly gas as a transition fuel, will continue to play a critical role much longer than we were currently expecting. So it's about us adding enough value, one. It's about us thinking about what happens in 80 to 100 years. It's about us adding value. If we can do all of this, then we can be a really big player. I think the world is going to begin to rethink issues around renewables and all of that. But, ultimately, it will still happen. So we need to begin to think about issues around diversification, even for us, net zero, energy self-sufficiency. Because it's not sufficient to have the base resource. So I can't go get crude and put it in my car, for example. So as long as you don't add value to your base resource, you continue to have this cycle. This cycle of boom and bust. It's a cycle.
So as it is, we just have to continue to flow with the tide. Or what do you think? Because what is happening at the moment now, where do you think Nigeria will stand with all of this? We'll keep paying subsidies. We'll keep... where does Nigeria stand?
Forget the next 1 year. It's going to be politics. Maybe the next 2 years, a year and a half. It's going to be politics. So you're not going to see much happen in terms of this change. We are going to be... We've been subject to the vagaries of the international market for a while. So I don't see that changing soon. If we work hard 3 years, 4 years, but unfortunately, it looks like in the next 1, 2 years, this is where we still will be. Unless, for example, we can raise financing, the refineries can work, the Dangote refinery is in place. That would reduce the tendency to always be affected by international issues. Other than that, we will remain where we are, unfortunately.
Interesting conversation there. I've been speaking to Dr. Ayodele Oni there, letting us understand the impact of this surge or this increase in the price of crude, and it continues to go high by the day, considering what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Thank you so much for making sense of all of these figures and what it means for Nigeria, and of course, not even Nigeria, even the global economy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.